The presenter today is Manjusha Matthew, Managing Director. With a Bachelor of Science in Statistics and an MBA in Marketing Management, Manjusha is a creative and results-driven senior marketing management professional with over 27 years of experience across geographies, Fortune 500 companies, and industry sectors. Manjusha has worked with leading consultancy companies in India and with Procter & Gamble in Yemen, East Africa, and has worked with Transmed, leading FMCG products distributor in UAE. Manjusha speaks English and Hindi fluently, while understands Arabic with a fair degree in speaking Arabic. Manjusha's key performance area, KPA, are ME and GCC expertise, market research, imports consultancy, international business development, trade agreements, tariffs, trade missions, and B2B business matching in FMCG, food sector, retail and food service sector. Manjusha is the key leader, managing all the front-end activities. Please welcome Manjusha Matthew.
Okay, great. So I'm sure that you're spending this morning with us and you must be having some expectations. So as we go along, if I'm not able to address those, please stop me and ask me the questions as you deem necessary. From my side, before we start the webinar, I just want to, of course, right now I'll start sharing the presentation with you. And in doing that, I will also then tell you what is it that I want to achieve during the course of this webinar. Okay, so if it does not meet your expectations, please do add yours as well. I will try and accommodate that. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen with all of us right now and start. Okay, so I'm just going to move Zoom windows aside. Okay, so when Frank and Celia and Josh asked me to conduct this webinar, we all agreed that our objective is to share information about the Middle East and the possibilities for all of us to build business in food sector in the Middle East. And that is exactly what I'm going to focus on as a topic today. The purpose of the presentation is not in any way to persuade you or dissuade you, but to mention the facts as they are and give you a perspective while sitting here, how we look at US products and everything that you do in the US and then send it to us and how we look at it. Okay, so that you understand what is the scope for you to grow your products into these countries. And that is what I plan to achieve today to help you understand more about our region. Okay, so with that, now we start. So this is about the trade outlook in Persian Gulf, and we'll end with understanding Gulfood, the trade show in 2023, which is not very far, 3 months from now. You know, sitting in US, and even when I go to US, I hear different terms, right? It's like, I hear about Middle East, I hear about GCC, I hear about MENA region and so on. So before we start the presentation, I will also be clarifying the terms with you so that we all are on the same page as far as the terms are concerned. If you can see my screen now, okay, the first thing is about the Persian Gulf that we talk about. So what is the Persian Gulf? Persian Gulf is nothing but about 8 of the Middle East countries that are bordered with this blue sea that you can see, which is the Gulf of Persia. Okay, so out of these 8 countries, we'll be talking about 6 countries in detail, and we will not be talking about Iran and Iraq. The other 6 countries that you see here, which are UAE, Oman, Qatar, Kuwait here, and Bahrain here, we'll be talking about it, and of course, Saudi Arabia. Okay, so that is the Gulf. These are the Persian countries that we understand as 8 countries. Let's remember henceforth about only 6 countries without Iran and Iraq. Now, just to take you through the agenda, you know, the agenda is very nicely put together by Frank and the team, of course. And when I was going through the agenda, I realized that what exactly we want to achieve in this agenda today is to understand all the WH questions about the market here. Okay, to say, what is this region like? Where is it located? What is it that sells more? Who are my consumers? And what should I do? When should I do? And what is in it for me? Why should I sell my products in this country when I have so much to do in the US itself? Right? So these are the questions that we are going to understand and answer as a part of the agenda. And if we answer all of them, I think we would have covered the agenda. So moving on, again, abbreviations and terms. ME is Middle East. If I talk about ME, it's Middle East. GCC is Gulf Cooperation Council of 6 countries, which we'll see again. Basically, these are Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, and Bahrain. MENA is Middle East and North Africa. So this is when you talk about the 6 GCC countries, and then Egypt, Algeria, Libya, and possibly up to Morocco. Then KSA is Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, or we could also just call it Saudi. UAE is United Arab Emirates. GDP is Gross Domestic Product, and PPP is Purchasing Power Parity. One of the references will be made is about consumer-oriented foods. And I was wondering myself as to what those include. So this includes dairy, food preparations, fresh fruit, poultry, meat, beef, and nuts, chocolates, fresh vegetables, and wine and beer. Okay, so moving on, we are again looking at the region. Okay, so if you go from big picture to the small picture, the biggest picture is the Middle East, which has 13 countries, which are listed here. If we narrow down those 13 countries to 6 countries, which are unified politically and economically, then we are looking at GCC, the 6 countries that we have been talking about, and which you see the list on the screen. What is important is that at the heart of GCC is the country where I'm sitting in right now, which is the United Arab Emirates. And the reason for that is that there are a lot of the environment in UAE is such that culturally, socially, as well as far as business is concerned, it's very easy to do business, and it's very easy to be tolerated in UAE as both as social and on business front. That is why UAE comes to the heart of these 6 GCC countries, and most of the business happens out of UAE. So we will also then look at UAE on a micro level, while we look at GCC at a macro level. Any questions so far? Oh, now, this is a chart, which of course looks very, what should I say, full of numbers. Okay, but these are basically the basic parameters. It just tells you in descending order, what is the population of the countries that we are looking at. So we are looking at Saudi with the highest population as 36 million people, to starting with then UAE, which is about 10 million, going down to Bahrain, which is 1.75 million. I have always faced this dilemma with European and American companies to say, it's such a small market size, right? So why should we be there? So one of my answer is that if you look at individual countries, yes, it is small. But if you look at it together, it is a good 60 million population that you're trying to reach out to, which could very well be 2 states of the size of California, maybe, right? So we have to have that perspective as to who are we going to target, what size of the population and what market size are we going to target. Now, the first 2 countries, which is Saudi and UAE, okay, as you can see, the population is strong, at least it's in double digits, which is 36 million and 10 million. Importantly, when you look at it, what are the big drivers of any business or culture in these 2 countries is expatriates. And in UAE, the expatriate population is at 88%. That means there is only about 12% local population, that is the local Emirati population, right? So when you see these color markings, blue shows the highest number and green shows the second higher number. Okay, all the other numbers just follow. So when you look at this chart in that perspective, then what we are seeing here is that what is in these countries, what is the export of top 10 products from US. And most of these top 10 products we'll see in a second as to what those are. But I'm talking only about food products here. And we're talking about top 10 products which are being imported by these countries are in KSA is nearly a billion, which is 961 million here. And in UAE, it's close to what KSA imports. So what we are seeing here is that UAE, with 1/3 the population of KSA or even lesser, okay, the amount of import of products that we have in the UAE is nearly as much as what KSA imports. Of course, there are two reasons for that. One is UAE consumes much more because our per capita income on PPP basis or purchase price parity basis is much higher. And second thing is that we also re-export. UAE is also a re-export market. As a result of which, we nearly import as much as what Saudi imports, right? And this is the reason for that. Just a second, yeah. So this actually gives us ranks in the overall hierarchy as to where we stand when you export products from US to the Middle East. KSA ranks 22nd and UAE ranks 26th number in these products when you export it from US. And of course, before us, you'll have many other countries who come up to the 22nd and the 26th. To get the base right, because we have different population numbers, different PPP, per capita incomes, GDP, and so on, what we have also done is we have said, so whatever we import in the country from US in terms of top 10 food products, what does it amount to in terms of per capita consumption? And as you can see, the UAE per capita consumption of these products is highest at $81.38 per person, whereas in Saudi, it is 26.67. And even in a smaller country like Kuwait and Qatar, it is still higher than Saudi. So what it tells us is that the more affluent the country is, the consumption is higher. Okay, consumption is higher because of the affluence or any other re-export possibilities. You can see the country of Qatar, which is right now in great news because of FIFA World Cup, which will get hosted there mid this month till the end of next month. So when we talk about Qatar, Qatar is of course has very rich reserve of gases, as a result of which its income is very high and the population is very low. So it's per PPP on PPP basis, its income is high at $91,500 per person. So this is an overall understanding of the chart to say that we have a total population of about 60 million people. We have very high income groups, and most importantly, what the chart doesn't tell us is that all these countries do not have arable land, as a result of which we are highly dependent on imports of fresh fruits, vegetables from all over the world. And that is where the biggest opportunity is. Okay, so we are limited by how much of food the money can buy. And we are literally, our affluence actually is defined by what type of food we can eat, if we can eat fresh fruits and vegetables or not, and so on. So this is what it is. I remember about 10 years ago, the countries were actually buying land in other neighboring countries to have these oil for soil programs so that they could actually start growing some food for themselves, all of us. Okay, so for example, we would have bought land in Djibouti or in Ethiopia to grow food, but that is not the kind of food security which is adequate for consumers who are very rich and growing and young and educated, as a result of which we are always dependent on importing food from different parts of the world. So what are the things that sell here? What are the things that we buy here? Okay, in terms of the top products that we talked, and plus few more that I've given to you over here. This is a chart for, on an average, for all the 6 countries. It does not in any way mean that these are in the same order for each of the countries. Okay, so we are talking about tree nuts, which of course California is very famous for. Then we have food preparations, processed vegetables, hay, soybean meal, then condiments, sauces. We depend heavily on US for poultry meat and its products such as eggs. Beef and Angus beef and beef products are of course very popular when they come out of US, and we import all of these products as per our needs, which is growing. Now, this was the overall overview for the entire GCC, the 6 countries, which is Saudi, UAE, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. Now we are going from there to the center of the business, which is the United Arab Emirates, which is here, which is where I'm based. You must have heard about UAE, about everything being bigger than, excuse me, about everything being bigger than what one could imagine. You have Burj Khalifa, the tallest building here. Then you have, before that, we had Burj Al Arab, which is a 7-star property of hotels wherein people like Roger Federer have played tennis on the helipad. And then we also have Museum of the Future. The name itself defines how innovative we can be to have a museum for the future. Last year, we were, of course, in news because of hosting Expo 2020 in terms of making all the best-in-class executions and bringing so many countries together in their country pavilions. And US Pavilion was one of the most active pavilion during Expo 2020. Some of you might have visited also and seen the benefit of that. Me, as a businesswoman, all these bigger breakthroughs are primarily defining 3 T's. Okay, one is about the country is very particular about trading because we want to reduce our dependency on oil and the money that it fetches. So we are big onto trading. So first is trading. The second is, of course, to attract tourism with all the locations that I showed you. And the third is tolerance. This is a country wherein we have mosques, churches, synagogue, and temples, and people are allowed to practice their own religion without in any way interfering with the others, right? So this is something very unique in terms of UAE, and that is why you will see very soon why so many people and ethnicities are surviving here so well. A perspective about UAE and US trade, and this is not food only, this is an overall trade as given to us by UAE Embassy in the US. Okay, so since 2009, with all the ups and downs, UAE remains the #1 export market for US goods in the entire Middle East and North Africa, the MENA region that I talked about. Okay, through all these ups and downs, we are the #1 country, even though we are smaller than Saudi Arabia, we are the #1 country in terms of importing food and non-food products from US, right? This is because some of the key facts that we can see here on my screen are, there is a strong relationship, business relationship between US and the UAE for building mutual business. Now, this relationship is not only supported by various agreements, but it's also supported by people preferring US-made products, right? As a result of which we have a strong business tie with the US, which is, as it's said here, is a robust relationship. And this particular business is measured in terms of non-oil trade. So that is what we're talking about, and not the oil trade. What is not mentioned here is food is still not the topmost category of US exports. Certainly that is not the case because, the amount of food that we import is huge, but the value of the food that we import will never be able to match with the aircrafts and the spacecrafts and the nuclear materials that we buy from anywhere else. Because of which food does not come here as topmost categories, but we are a net importer of food from the US, right? And importantly, we do trade with each of the US states, all the 50 states. So it's not only one state that we do business with, but all the states. And that is why we have some of the programs and trade missions that we do, which are targeted at different produce, different industries at different times of the year and at different states. So by doing all of this, we are happy to observe that we support over 100,000 jobs in the US across all these industries. Now, some of the country facts for UAE. Excuse me. People usually know the UAE as Dubai, but UAE is actually United Arab Emirates, and as the name explains, it's united 7 Emirates 52 years ago by taking independence from Britain. And these are the 7 Emirates, which is Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Ajman, Fujairah, Ras Al Khaimah, Sharjah, and Umm Al Quwain. So these are the 7 Emirates. So what exactly happens is that each of the emirate is independent in its own jurisdiction. At the same time, there's a federal government based in Abu Dhabi, which is the capital of the country. And the head of the country is the president of the country, who's His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. He is the head of the country. Now, so we are united. At the same time, we have the freedom to operate within the local laws of each of the emirates as well. They don't differ much, but there is a freedom to do so. Now, it's ruled by all the rulers of these 7 emirates, and then they together appoint the prime minister who heads Dubai. So you must have heard a lot of times about His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, who is the ruler of Dubai and also the vice president of the country. Now, we have, talking about tolerance, after years of enmity, we are the first country who established diplomatic relations with Israel in year 2020. And it is about diplomatic relations, as well as we talked about how socially all the ethnicities and religions are accepted here, as long as everybody gets the freedom to practice them within those places where they are supposed to worship. Right now, for us sitting here, we look at UAE as a major trading hub because it's a gateway to the region. As you can see in the map, right? If you look at United Arab Emirates here with Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and all the other Emirates on this side, we are all bordering with Saudi Arabia, we border with Oman, Qatar, and further from Saudi Arabia, we can go to Kuwait and Bahrain as well. So what does that mean? It means that we have land borders as well as we can do business and transport and do shipments out of UAE to all these neighboring countries in the GCC. And that is the advantage of being located here. And we have made good use of our strategic location by building ports and facilities which are state of the art, and by building all the procedures and documentations and systems around it so that people can actually clear their goods by just filling in forms online.
Manjusha, we do have a question in the chat, logistics question. Is there a preference for originating exports from US East Coast? How is US West Coast positioned? Higher shipping, pricing, longer sea journeys?
Yeah. So East Coast is what we're talking about, New York, New Jersey, and West Coast is Los Angeles and California, of course. So there is certainly a preference, not by us, but by US exporters to send it out of East Coast because it's faster and cheaper. West Coast does take about 2 weeks more, and hence the cost is higher. So the preference comes purely from logistics side, which is it takes time. Possibly even the availability of the vessels is less on West Coast than in East Coast. We have had shipments coming from Long Islands in New York to Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and they were here within a month's time. And for Lulu, who we'll discuss again. But from West Coast, we have very few shipments because it takes longer. Now, the longer time does not only mean it costs you more, but it also means that your product shelf life is being wasted in the ship, in the vessel, right? So those are the considerations. So that is why the inner transport for you is something very important to work on. Recently, when I was in Virginia, with Virginia Department of Agriculture, I visited their internal port that can actually facilitate the goods received at that port from there to the port in New York and New Jersey. So that way they were managing it quite well in terms of speeding it up. So I'm not aware about your facilities in West Coast, but if there are any such facilities, I think that might speed up your reaching your destination faster.
Okay,
Yeah.
there is a follow-up question also. How does a California company compete?
How does a California company compete? I think it's not only the cost that comes from logistics, but it also comes from your cost of production also. And given that both of them you would have optimized it, I think then the good thing for you is that you are coming to the Middle East. And it's, of course, it is a price sensitive market, but you give us a reason to choose your product over your competitors. We are willing to pay a premium for that. Okay, so as long as your premium is reasonable or less than your USP, the product stands for, if you have that right product, you have the captive audience over here. That's how much I can say, because there is a limitation on how much of cost control you can do, right? But one thing is very clear, we are not the type to buy food from China and eat. Okay, so you are safe that way. We are not going to become, you are not going to be competing with cheaper produce. You know, we are getting our food from number one is European Union, number two is India, and then number three is US. Okay, so we are getting our food from developed countries. Now again, in terms of India, we are not buying apples, for example, from India. We are buying apples from European Union as well as from Western Europe. We have apples coming from France, Italy, and then we have apples coming from down, which is New Zealand. Now, of course, New Zealand apples are very expensive compared to the other two apples, but I'm sure that California produce will not be as expensive as when it comes from down and under from Australia and New Zealand. So we have a presence of different countries, however far they are in terms of their selling their produce, because we have audience or target consumers for that, if that answers your question.
Okay, there is one comment in the chat also. It says go FAS for deals.
Go FAS? I'm sorry, I could not hear you.
Yes, it says go FAS for deals, and it's from Siraj Ismail.
Yeah, so the shipping on the buyer, that's it.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll be covering this towards 80% of this presentation. We'll talk about buyers and the price structures and possibilities, right? And I'm sure you'll have many more questions then. Okay. Hello.
Yes, I can see your presentation. Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, because so what again, this is just the same slide that I shared with you earlier. This is just a small reminder about what UAE is, which is 10 million population, which is approximately equal to, I think, North Carolina or nearly Virginia. And so that's what we're talking about as one country and equal to one of these three states in the US. And per capita income is high at 70,000 US dollars. And the top 10 exports were valued at 820 million, with a 26th number as the exporter, exporting country from US to the UAE. Now, when we talk about UAE is leading the region of Gulf Cooperation Council, okay, why do we say that? So here are quick facts about UAE. Just a quick read on that is that it's the second largest population and the economy in the Middle East after Saudi Arabia. We saw that. But on a per person basis, it's much more affluent than Saudi Arabia. Then we have 88% of the population, which is expatriates, right? So all of us, for all the expatriates here, this is our second home. So can you imagine how many of us are making this as our second home? And because we have been able to integrate here so well with having access to food from our own home countries, and that really matters a lot. Food, education, the possibilities that we enjoy at home, they're all here. Medical, education, and food, and that's what makes it, such a diverse country in terms of having 88% as expatriates. I remember 10 to 15 years ago, this number was around 80%. Now it has increased to 88%, even though there is a population growth also among the local Emirati population. Now, as we talk about some of the numbers, I do not want us to get confused with numbers, because just to clarify, there are 2 or 3 different sources of numbers that we have used while being consistent with one single source. But it's not the source. It also matters the time frame. Some of the numbers are for 2019. Okay, some of the numbers are for 2020, 21, and so on. Some of the numbers are for total exports. Some of the numbers are for top 10 products exported from US and so on. So we'll just understand the numbers for a particular slide and then believe that all the numbers are directionally correct, which they are referring, but their context is different. Okay, so we will not compare numbers from this slide with earlier or the later slide. That's my only request to you, because it will get confusing unnecessarily. So in 2019, just at the end of the year, when we had started experiencing COVID and COVID related issues, United States exported 1.29 billion in agricultural and related products to the UAE. Okay, and agriculture essentially means non-processed fresh agriculture produce and forestry in terms of logs and lumber. So that is how much they exported to the UAE. And when you look at this 1.29 billion, it becomes a bit smaller when the following year we imported a total food from all over the world worth 14 billion. So you see the gap. With conscious effort, I think we all should be able to work towards getting bigger than 1.29, much bigger than 1.29. Okay, because finally you are competing with very high priced countries such as EU and also India because of GST, the general sales taxes there and so on. Only thing is India has the closest proximity as compared to EU and US. But yet your competition is also expensive. Your quality is better than all the rest. So you have a scope as US companies to grow bigger and better in our countries, right? Which is in the Middle East. That is one. Then we are talking about, once again, the topography is such that we will not be able to produce what we want in our country. As a result of which, 90% of the products are imported here. 90% of the food products are imported here. At the same time, I do not even see that we are not a IT or a computer manufacturing country. We are not a furniture manufacturing industry, right? So we have limitation on manufacturing. We have limitation on local production because traditionally we have been a trading country, which is buy, sell locally and resell outside. As a result of which when we buy products here, we don't only sell it in GCC, but the Persian Gulf that we talked about, which includes Iran and Iraq, but of course with certain restrictions to Iran. Primarily the food can be exported and nothing else. So that is the scope that we have. If we are small, we have so much more space to grow, and 1.29 billion is still not small at all, because we can see and buy and eat US products. So they're certainly a part of our daily life. And we are only talking about the naturally grown fruits and vegetables and some of the meat products such as beef, Angus beef, and beef parts. The fact of the matter is that there are so many other branded products which come from US. They are not counted in this because they are under processed food categories. So we still have a huge possibility to grow. We have been talking about, just now we saw 1.29 as agricultural products. Now I'm going to talk to you about UAE imported about 6.4 billion in consumer-oriented products in 2021. The earlier data was for 2019 and it was only agriculture products. This is 2021 and all the consumer-oriented products. Now, what are the consumer-oriented products? We're talking about dairy, food preparations, fresh fruits, poultry, meat, tree nuts, beef and beef cuts, chocolate, cocoa, and fresh fruits and vegetables, wine and beer. That's what we're talking about. Now, when you look at these products, in 2021, we imported 6.4 billion from all over the world, only of these categories that I mentioned, right? And if you look at this, this shows us a split of where did we primarily imported that from. So if you can see, EU is the largest at 39%, US is 11%, but Saudi Arabia is bigger at 22%. I'm going to tell you why is that the case in a second from now. So we're talking about EU being number one, followed by Saudi, followed by India, and then of course the others. Now, we're talking about dairy. Saudi Arabia has the largest dairy farm in the region. And it's the most advanced dairy farm called Al Marai. So we get a lot of dairy like milk, yogurt, buttermilk, etc. from Saudi, butter, cheeses, and so on. Plus, Saudi has also traditionally focused on manufacturing. So some of the products are also, food products are also produced in Saudi. The ones which are produced are primarily the staples, such as pasta and soft drinks and juices are made in Saudi. So because of the proximity and some of the trade agreements that we have, we import that stuff from Saudi. And of course, the shelf life is such that it only makes sense to either import it or produce it locally and consume it. And that's why Saudi is at 22%. EU, we discussed, of course. One of the major imports from India is, of course, fresh fruits and vegetables, as well as rice. The basmati rice is quite famous from India, and it's a major source of rice for us in the entire region and not only in the UAE. So this is why you see this as a pie chart as to where does the 6.4 billion has come from different countries right up to Brazil. One of the considerations that you may want to have is, and I don't have an answer for that, is using West Coast cheaper for us than importing products from Brazil? Frankly, I don't know the answer. I'm not on top of what Brazil does. Okay, but you might know because you might be exporting something to Brazil or importing. So something like that is a worth its while as a comparison to think about. Now, what are the major food consumption drivers? What is driving? How much can you eat, right? And here we are eating a lot. We're eating a lot, and we are also eating a lot of expensive food because we want it to be very good for health. So one is we have the local population who's residing here and working here, and we're the local consumers of food products. The other, of course, is tourism. And in my personal opinion, whenever the tourism exceeds the local population in terms of number of visitors to the country is affluent. And in our case, that is indeed the case. We are a population of 10 million, and our tourism in last year was 27 million, which is about 2.5 times. So tourism for us is a major source of income. And with many of the properties being in 5-star segment, the fine dining also has made a major difference in terms of what people consume. So tourism is one. And because of the diversity, we always have to cater to different tastes, right? From Vietnam to Brazil to Mexico to US and to Italian taste and French taste, of course, and Indian taste, who are the majority people here. So diversity is important. The numbers are important. And over a period of time, we have had issues about health. These are all the issues which come with a lot of wealth, because, you know, as we get affluent, we want to try out new processed foods. We get exposure to going abroad and finding those QSRs and eating those, etc. So the country has had a phase of incidence of diabetes and heart-related issues, for some of them being very young. As the same as in the last 20 years, the children who have been born, the millennials as we call them, and as they grew and they went abroad for studies, they have also come back with a lot of awareness about health. And then, you know, the things about organic food, natural food, high fiber food, then fitness, and all of that is on the rise. And that is what we have been actually focusing on in terms of provide healthy food and they will buy. This is one of the things. So from traditional emphasis on being on meat and on carbohydrates, which is protein and carbs like bread and rice and meat, people are now moving towards lean meat, baked foods, and also the grilled foods and cheeses in limited quantity, and living their life much better in terms of health. So as we said, this itself is also demanding organic and natural high fiber foods. Then millennial population we talked about. Now, people here are such that once they like something and they find it suitable for their health, they stay with it. There is a strong brand loyalty or product loyalty. And that is why we are one of the countries wherein the incidence of, not incidence, but availability of all the US brands and companies is very high. You name it, Procter & Gamble, Kraft, and Pepsi and Coke. All of these companies are certainly, they are a part of our daily lives. So we are very brand loyal as consumers go. COVID taught us a lot, like everybody else also changed their ways of living, and so did we. So people started cooking at home. And while cooking at home, they also realized what they should eat and what they should not eat. And again, meal plans and online grocery shopping has also taken a new level altogether. So Amazon is thriving, and a local Saudi-based online retailer called Noon is thriving. Plus, we have many other small online platforms which are doing very good in business. And they also have to import and buy food from others to be able to make food preparations from that. Snacking continues to be the most important thing in the population, but what they snack on has changed. And that is where now we can all make a difference. We're talking about, instead of snacking on chips, we're talking about snacking with dry fruits or nuts, right? So the nuts, when they, for example, one of the success stories of nuts in our country has been the wonderful pistachio nuts from California. So that, and then the number of SKUs that they have introduced just shows that, you know, snacking is here to stay. And also we have been actually getting a lot of baked chips from US, and snacking is a growing category. Now, this is because the growing millennial population likes to have not heavy meals, but to have something on the go as convenience as well as something which is healthy. So this is where we are in terms of the need for healthy foods, which will make people healthier also. As the society goes, not only people are more aware about their health, but their incomes have also risen and they're rising as they grow, and hence they are able to make choices which they can afford for their better health. Now, to make those choices, they're very discernible as consumers. They read food labels, they understand food labels, and for that, they go to the supermarkets and they shop. They do their online research. They see what is selling on Amazon for what price and why is it selling. They read customer reviews. So all of this actually tells us how educated and discernible the consumers are, and hence what our product proposition should be for these consumers, right? Now, so consumers would go and shop in supermarkets, and the products come to those supermarkets from different ports and the customs facilities that we have developed. And this is also, of course, very important for the hotels to whom we can supply the food products. So far you have understood about different habits of your consumers and what they like and what they don't like or what they prefer as millennials. But as the millennials have come into being, the number of incidents of working women, especially among local Emirati population, has increased. Now, if you go to any government office and banks, you would always see a number of local Emirati women who are working, and they all are not only women, but even the Emiratis are very fluent in English because they have not only got their education here in English schools, but they have also gone abroad and made English as their language for communication and business communication, right? So that is, so this is what is a factor also in terms of living the lifestyle, which is the happening or the cool lifestyle. That's what they have been doing. As people have become more aware about their health and food choices, there are very specific food trends which are on top of minds of the UAE consumers, right? Which is healthy frozen food is one, plant-based, vegan, gluten-free, natural, probiotic, and supplements. These are all the things, these are the trends in terms of eating foods. Once upon a time, like 15 or 20 years ago, vegan was hardly heard of, right? But a revolution has started in the last 10 years, and now you will always see vegan food or vegan food aisles in the supermarket. You'll find collagen drinks, and you'll also find natural organic foods. So gluten-free foods, gluten-free breads, gluten-free bread mixes, and so on. All of this, again, is not only happening in isolation, but government is also supporting a lot of health initiatives by building awareness. For example, this month of October to November, end of October to end of November, we have a fitness challenge month every year. So that every single individual in the country is encouraged to work out, and with the hope that then that habit will stay, because once you get used to something as invigorating as fitting, making yourself fit, it actually stays on, and the government is making sure that all of us have enough facilities to go around and work out. So this is something is being supported by the government also. And there are a lot of things which are happening in the society and in the schools, which is encouraging all the people to stay fit. So everything that you do should actually focus on health and fitness, and then it will certainly be appealing to the consumers. While we talked about consumers, who's the resident population here, we cannot ignore in any way the visitors and where they stay and how hotels are catering to their taste. The number of hotel establishments in the UAE is very high, over 1,100 hotels, which have grown in a year's time by 5%. I mean, during COVID times, so many hotels closed down. We don't have that number. and yet we have a plus 5%, and hence it is significant. Number of hotel rooms are 194,000. That's a lot of rooms given the size of the country that we have. And they hosted 19 million guests just in last year, in year 2021. Of course, the numbers might seem higher as compared to year 2020, but the fact of the matter is they have been able to bounce back. As soon as COVID was out of our way, we were able to attract different visitors and actually start with the business. Because when we talk about hotel and guests, we are talking about business tourism as well as leisure tourism. So both are back now into the country. As the hotels are doing better, and hotels also have to conform with the tastes of the people who are coming from abroad, from the region and beyond, they also have to cater to the taste and the health aspect of the taste. And there is a lot of requirement for, again, ethnic foods as well as healthy foods. And that is something very important for us to consider. Now, while we are talking about guests coming from abroad, we are also talking about guests who come from within the country, between, for example, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, as well as from within the region. Okay, because as a region, which is Gulf Cooperation Council or GCC region, we have a lot of facilities to travel easily within the region, like you might be traveling within the states. Okay. For all of this that we have a very small manufacturing or food processing industry, right? Government would like us to do that, but it's just that we possibly do not have that expertise. We do not have that. Investment possibility. And again, culturally, it's so ingrained in all of us that we are a trading company. We are a trading country. So it's a bit slow for us to get into manufacturing, right? So it's not, we are not a great manufacturing as a country goes. Yet, those who manufacture and those new engineers who come from studying abroad and they want to start manufacturing something, again, we will continue to import raw materials to process something. We need raw materials, and those raw materials for food as well as for agriculture or for everything else will continue to come from US, European Union, and India, no doubt about that, right? So bulk and intermediate products are vital, right? And that is one of the things that you as countries can focus on. So far we talked about individual consumers, we talked about hotels, and we talked about overall where the direction of the food consumption is or the trend is. And all of this is also reflected in the grocery industry sales, or the grocery sales increasing by about 8% in the last 1 year. That is significant because we have had so many people going back to their own home countries and then new people coming in. At the same time, there has been a change in the prices as well. So considering all of that, we actually feel that now we are back to normal and we have bounced back even more. So this is where we are, that we are growing and we are growing faster. Now, when we talk about this, then we of course have to know what is the market structure from where the products can be sold. In many countries, I have seen market structure being very fragmented. But here I have seen in the region itself, market structure is extremely consolidated. 80% of all the business for food happens from hypermarkets and supermarkets. Now, this is true of all the other countries in the region, in Saudi, in Qatar and in Oman as well, but with slightly different percentages. That is because if, for example, if we have a chain called Carrefour here, the Carrefour also has branches in Saudi, Oman, Qatar, and Kuwait, right? So they also they carry the same merchandise, they cater to the same people who are culturally alike and diverse from different countries. So overall, when making sure that your products reach the consumers, we are looking at hypermarkets and supermarkets, okay, because they represent about 80% of the local consumption. Then HoReCa, which is hotels, restaurants, and catering, they certainly consume bulk, okay. I mean, in our opinion, depending on the category, if retail consumes X, hotels and restaurants and catering would consume at least 3X, depending on the category, right? So, for example, for bulk and for staples, it will be much higher. This is, so we have now two channels of distribution, which is hypermarkets, supermarkets, and HoReCa, the end users. And then we also have wholesalers. So what do these wholesalers do? Wholesalers actually export the product to the buyers who come to their shops from other countries. So we have so many buyers coming to the wholesale market from Africa and from North Africa region, from Egypt, from Libya, from Nigeria, and placing orders with the wholesalers. So the wholesalers are the one are also keeping the trading activity very alive in the country. So they export. After we import it from you, they re-export it to the other countries, right? Then, who are the top retailers? The top retailers are, you all must have heard of Carrefour, Lulu, Union Corp, Spinneys, and so on. Each one of them have their own positioning. So what we do as consultant is, when we look at your product, we know which are the top 5 retailers that you need to go to, okay, depending on the product and depending on who ultimately will be shopping in those outlets. So that is what we do. So there are many top retailers here. For example, Carrefour, Abu Dhabi Corp, Sharjah Corp, Al Madina Hypermarket, and so on. So once again, it depends, branded product, staple, nuts, private label, all of that. And then we decide where should the products go to on priority basis. Now, I'm just going to move this. Sorry, I can't see it myself. Okay. So far we have seen the region, the country, the consumers, and the customers. Now let's see what is the route to enter the market. Okay. And of course, if you have any questions along this, you can certainly ask me. So first, I'm talking about you here. You are the international producer of your agriculture or goods over here, right? Then, as a producer, you have a lot of questions, okay, to say, should I send a full container load or less than a container load? How do I go about product registration? Does that mean that the product will get registered on somebody else's name and not on my name? Now, how do I do Arabic label? Why should I do Arabic label? Okay, so, and how will I go about doing label assessment? What about payment terms? Are my payment terms secure? Will I get my payment? And so on. These are some of the top questions that we come across from international producers. If you have any other, please do ask, and that's fine. Now, when you produce after that, okay, you have to then sell it to someone who's your buyer. Now, who could be your buyer? Depending on the product and depending on where your product should reach for end consumer to eat, your product could, your buyer could be a distributor, a wholesaler, or an importer or customer, right? So the questions that we need to answer at this stage is, what is the type of importer who's suitable for my products in my business? So example, if you take tree nuts as a product, okay, you can have a wholesaler or a retailer who's buying your products directly. And then he has a packing facility wherein he's packing, let's say, almonds under his own brand name. So that is one. If you're talking about a branded beef jerky, right, then you'll need to find a distributor who will take your product. So Carrefour, Spinneys, Lulu, and Union Corp, Abu Dhabi Corp, and so on. That's one. If you are producing superior quality, let's say some Italian sauce, tomato-based sauce, or if you're making Florida's natural juice, then And if you're targeting the hotels, then you have to find out a distributor who will be able to take your products to all those 1,144 hotels that we saw. So again, it all depends on what is my product, who's my target consumer, and how do I take it to them? And that is what will answer your question here, which is to say, what is the type of importer that I should look for? And then if I know what is the type of the importer, then how do I go about finding that importer? And how do I know that whatever the importer claims in terms of his capabilities, if he actually delivers on that or not? How can I go about doing due diligence about the coverage of the market? Then, of course, before this, you will also find out if your customer is food service or an end user as such, as we as people who are staying here as your consumers. And to do all of this, what is the kind of investment I need? Okay, and how do I go about protecting it, and when will I get return on my investment? So these are some of the questions that you will have, and we as a company always try and answer those questions based on understanding your product.
Manjusha, we do have a question in the chat. It said, I
Sure.
would be interested to know if you can recommend any brokers.
I would love to, but it all depends on what is your product, right? What is your product? And then based on your product, and we'll come to the stage wherein we'll see how to find a right broker. Okay, again, broker is not what I'm talking about here so far. If you see the type of importers, we have not used the word broker as yet. Okay, because it's not that type of market wherein you can have brokers and agents who will do justice to your product. Okay, you cannot just sell your product and sell if that's what the broker does. But the broker should be able to take you through the entire supply chain. Okay, so this is the next. So essentially, all our discussion will center around buyer, distributor, wholesaler, importer, and customer. So let's see how to, now this is the part that I'm going to expand on in the next slide. Okay, let's call it a generically speaking, it's an importer that we're talking about. Okay, so your importer could be a distributor. Let's assume that we have found the right distributor for you. Okay, your importer could be a distributor. If it's a distributor, then what are the typical products that go to the distributor? Distributors want brands to sell. Okay, so very often, we get these requests like, Manjusha, get us Kraft, another brand like Kraft from US. Get us another Head and Shoulder. Get us whatever. Okay, so distributors want a good brand to sell. They want Ben & Jerry or whatever. So if you have good branded products, right, then distributor is the way to go. So in turn, what will the distributor do for you? He will take you to food service, to all the outlets, as in the hotels that we talked about, the restaurants and the catering places that we talked about, again, depending on your product. He can list you with all the retailers. He can sell your product to small wholesalers, and who in turn can sell it within the country to small packers or give it to small export houses, right? So if you have branded products, then this is the way to go. Now, initially I mentioned something about Long Island's. It was a reference to one of the companies that we worked with for 8 years, who has a non-food product. And they are a private label manufacturing company from Long Island. And for them, our job was to develop private label business for them in the region, right? So if the importer is producing something here, which is purely a private label or a store brand, then you go to the retailer directly, right? So we did have presence with Lulu. We made brands for Lulu and we made brands for Union Corp, right? Now, this is one way of doing it, which is you have a product readily packed in certain sizes for consumption, 1 kg or 2 pounds or whatever, and you only change the label on that for the retailer. right? If not, you sell it in bulk to the retailer, and he or she, the retailer packs it here in their own facility under their own brand name. The advantage here is that the retailer, when he buys it from you directly, he distributes it across all the other outlets within the chain of that outlet. For example, Lulu will distribute it to all the 116 outlets of Lulu and so on. So that's the advantage. So again, it comes down to your product in terms of choosing the importer, whether it will be a distributor or a retailer. Then the third is possibly what you meant by broker regarding the question that you had, which is the wholesaler. Okay, so whatever it is, US commands #1 position in terms of we buying our tree nuts from. So you be it almonds, be it walnuts, and we are major country of origin is US for buying those. So those kind of products first are bought by wholesalers. Okay, and then they in turn either export it or they sell it to local packers, right? So local packers who have their own brands, they buy it from wholesaler and then they pack it under their own brand name. And then they sell it. So for example, there's a company called Bayara, right? But they're so big, I'm sure they're buying it directly from the importer. But if they were to buy a few of the products from the wholesaler, then they have a packing facility and they would pack it under their own brand name, and then they would distribute it also across the retailer as well as across the food service channel. So this is all in terms of the entire route to market model. Now, this model is not exclusive of each other. Okay, there will be an overlap. So that overlap will ensure that you are capturing major share of your major market share for your product. Right, so we saw this and I also explained to you the rest in the earlier slide. Now, so it's again going back to the question, so do you know of any, do we know of any broker, etc.? Before that, I think whatever is our product, we should have very clear market entry considerations. And what are those? We have to understand who our competition is. Today, it's very difficult for me to find any product without competition. Okay, so we have to understand who our competition is, even if it is in bulk, even if it is a commodity like rice or sugar. We need to know if it's the sugar coming from Brazil or from India. We need to know if it is the rice, if it's coming from India, Pakistan, or from US. So who's buying what type of rice and who, and in what quantities they're buying, what varieties they prefer, and what is it that they use for. So doing this market review and understanding competition and positioning of the competition is very important, because then based on that, you as a producer can then decide what should be my market entry strategy. Then comes the label compliance. It sounds more difficult than what actually it is. It's a very easy thing to do, and we can always, of course, help you do that. It's not difficult. But what happens here is it's very simple. If you take any label, any product label, what does it have? It has three things. It has, one, your brand name, two, the product information in terms of usage, etc., and what does it do, and third is the nutrition information, right? So all these three things are important that they have to be correctly translated into Arabic. So we give it to the third-party translation agency, they get it translated, then we are registered with Dubai municipality for label assessment, and so we register the product on your behalf under your name, and we also give the labels for assessment, right? And finally, with a bit of a back and forth, some things Dubai municipality asks you to change. For example, for a dairy product, they would certainly insist that there should be an allergy advice. So we tell you that, then you write it in English, we translate that in Arabic, and we resubmit it, and so on. It's not difficult, it's a process that has to be followed. It does not take time. Usually it takes 1 week for one change. Okay, so as in if you make the change once and after that again there is another change which comes back, it would again take a week for us to upload it and get it approved. So it's not difficult, it can be done, because that's the right way to have your product available not only in the UAE, but in the entire Middle East area, not only in the 6 countries of GCC, but in all the other 13 to 14 countries. So that's the advantage that you have, that once you're compliant in terms of label, you can take your product to places. Now, when you have the right market knowledge and you have product registered under your name, then you should also be able to identify the right distributor, because that is when then you should be able to go to the distributor with a story to say, this is my product and this is why it is better, and this is how much of money you can make by selling this product, right? So that's the kind of story that the distributor likes. And then the distributor always, of course, tells you the other part of the story, which is to say that, there are certain investments that you require to list your products with the retailers. So there is a listing fee, and then there are certain shelf rentals, there is a sales and marketing budget, etc. So those are the discussions that you have with the distributor. Based on that, you make an agreement and then you launch the products, right? This is one which is a pre-launch. During the pre-launch, you also consider things like, oh, but the shipment is so small in size. I cannot tell you how many examples of small size shipments or less than container loads that I have had. And now they're all shipping multiple containers, because there are two things to this. One is how much ever market research or review that you do and come up with the best strategy. Finally, the moment of truth is when you are in the market, right? So you do not want to launch with a full container and part of that container go waste should your product be not well accepted by the consumers, right? So it's better to have small quantities first shipped in for people to try it out, build awareness, work on social media, and that way continue to create bigger demand for future. That's what makes sense. So once people start talking about it, eating the product, tasting it, liking it, then you're here to stay. That's one thing. So this is shipment size is a consideration. It's not a hurdle. There are a lot of consolidators in East Coast as well as in West Coast, and even from Europe, a lot of shipments for food preparations and ingredients come in with the help of consolidators. And they consolidate different cargo in a given ship and vessel, and then it comes here. Investments, yes, one has to discuss investments all the time. And then comes regulatory compliance. So we have discussed about label compliance. We'll discuss about a couple of other issues related to compliance. I think compliance is a way of life. If we have to enter in US or even in India with any other product, we have to follow the local compliance. And following is easy when you have the knowledge. So here is my job here right now is to give you that more knowledge that I have about compliance. One thing which I love the most about the GCC is the customs duty. Okay, there's a lot that I've written here, but it essentially says that since 2003, all the 6 countries came together and then they agreed that we'll have one standard customs duty. What does that mean? The duty will be paid only once at the point of entry. So we have 6 countries, right? UAE, Saudi, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait. Let's assume that the product comes for all the 6 countries into the UAE, right? Then we only pay duty in UAE once, which is a 5% duty. Okay, so duty structure is also very simple on that basis. So there are 2 things which I like. One is the unified customs duty. Any country that you go to, you pay the duty once, and that is only 5%. These things, once and 5%, that's one. Now, there are some products on which you pay 0% duty. For example, if we are importing live animals, then the duty is 0%. But if we are importing, let's say, alcohol, the duty is 50%. If we are importing tobacco products, then the duty is 100%. So it's very simple to understand what the duty structure is. Now, over the years, the countries have realized that most of the revenue for the duties is primarily going to the UAE. So then some countries have said only if your cargo is not opened, right? Then we will charge you. If it is not open, we will not charge you the duty, wherein you're using UAE as a transit port. But if it is open, then we'll charge you another 5%, right? So that again changes from country to country, and that is when the agreements between the country of origin, such as US, and the local country here come into picture about free trade agreements, right? So this is what this says about tariff. One important thing is also the currency perspective. Most of the countries have the currencies pegged to the dollar. So we have so much of stability in making calculations and managing the entire projection because of the because our currencies are pegged to the dollar. So you're looking at UAE, our peg rate is 3.673. It's the same rate for as long as I can remember, right? Likewise, Saudi Arabia is 3.75. So this means that 3.673 UAE dirhams is equal to $1 US. The only thing that changes is the spread and the difference between buying and selling price of that, right? Which is in 0.0 digits. So many dirhams is $1, as you can see in the peg rate. So over here, this is all very important because I have covered the GCC countries in terms of the peg that they have. These are the top 5 that I have covered. Okay, and the rate has been there, as I said, since long ago, as long as I can remember. So that gives you a stability in terms of thinking how much we will need to pay you and vice versa in terms of the countries. Now, what I've done for all of us is I've created a typical price structure. Okay, it's all fictitious in terms of numbers, but the assumptions are absolutely correct, which is, I have said it's a pricing format which we have developed for one carton. Okay, so that we can finally come up with a consumer price, a unit consumer price. Okay, you can change those numbers and you will be able to get the prices for your total shipment load. Now, the reason is that when you do competition analysis, you do it on the basis of one unit price. How much would a can of Pepsi cost me versus how much would a can of your product cost me, as an example. So we have done it on unit basis. So this is sorry. So I'm just moving this bar out of my vision. Yeah. Now, so I've called it a brand name as Delight. It's a product of edible oil, and the country of origin is US, and the size per pack, the PET bottle is 1.5 liters. And there are about 6 of those bottles, PET bottles, in a carton. Okay, so that's what it is. So unit price or the carton price for one in terms of CIF. Now, I have taken CIF, which is cost, insurance, and freight, for the right reasons that you mentioned, which is you could be sending the product from East Coast or from West Coast, right? And we do not know what those internal costs would be. So we have assumed that your product lands here on CIF basis at US dollar 20.95 for a carton or for 6 packs. So what happens once your product lands is very simple. You pay a duty of 5%, customs duty, and then you pay a VAT of 5%. As in, I'm sorry, I should not be saying you. The importer pays a duty and VAT of 5% each, right? Now, this is all on the landed cost. So that includes CIF also. Then what happens is typically clearances and transportation charges, which are calculated on CIF basis from Jebel Ali port to warehouse of the distributor, I have taken an average of 8%. But frankly, it is an estimate and it can vary because it can be much lesser than that if your cargo is of bigger volume, right? So, but it would not be very high. It would be in that range. Let's say 5 to 10%. Okay. So I have showed you that this is again a estimate. So based on this, from 20.95 as CIF price, now your price is 24.72. Now we talked about the retailer because this is edible oil. This will go into the shelves of all the retailers that we talked about, Carrefour, Lulu, Union Corp, and Spinneys. So what happens then? We have to appoint a distributor, right? Now, the landed cost to the distributor is 24.72. For the retail channel of distribution, what does the distributor do? He marks up the range by about 35 to 50%, right, on landed cost. Because what happens is he has to make investment on his warehouse. He has to have people who will go and sell the product. Plus, he has to make a strong margin of at least 30%, right? So the distributor charges, he puts his own markup of at least, let's say about 35 to 40, 50%. So I've taken an average of 42% here. Then he also has to support the retailer. The distributor also has to support Lulu and Carrefour for their weekly promotions, weekly magazines, their theme-based promotions like apples from USA or the USA week or whatever. And he has to support them with free products, with reduced prices of the product, with advertisement in their leaflets and booklets and whatnot. So he also keeps a marketing budget for that. And then if the retailer sells more than what they've agreed to, then the retailer also gets a rebate on the product that he's purchased. So he keeps a provision for that called as back-end rebates, right? That's about 18%. So with all of this, when the distributor adds these two things to his landed cost, then the cost to the retailer is now 39.55. We are nearly double as the cost to the retailer from the CIF to now. We are nearly at double the price, from $21 to around $40, right? Then the retailer himself also charges a markup or a markup to the end user or the consumers. So his markup is minimum 20 to 25% because the distributor is already in consultation with the manufacturer, has given him certain listing fees, etc. Right? So this is what it is. So based on this, from a CIF for a carton of 20.95, now the retail price for the carton is $50 or $49.44. That means the price per pack to the consumer is $8.24. What will change here is primarily the numbers in green, depending on the actuals, okay? Depending on your negotiation with the distributor, depending on how much you're willing to support your product with certain upfront investment. So this is a typical price structure format. And this does not include the cost of local warehousing because it's a distributor's responsibility. It does not include the cost of local sales and efforts that people will take in. Because once again, this is something that the distributor will take care of. Okay. I just explained the entire price structure to you right now. One important thing which I have not explained so far is for retail brands, the manufacturer will need to support. I'm on the second point here. Will need to support the distributor with a listing fee to list the products in the hypermarkets. What is typically called as a barcode fee. For every barcode, you have to pay the hypermarket. Now, depending on how strong the distributor is. Now, distributor's strength comes from the products that he distributes. If he is distributing a lot of products to the retailers, different brands and different products, then obviously he already has many agreements in place with the retailer. And he is able to say that this is a new brand, and on this new brand, I will only be able to pay you so much. You know, then the negotiation can be much more in your favor, than in favor of the retailer. So depending on your product and the strength of the distributor, you may have to allocate for a one-time initial investment of 30 to 125,000 US dollars. This investment can be done over a period of time. It doesn't have to be done at a point in time. As you start to distribute your products across different retailers, you may have to put this money up front, right? Now, this money is not included in the table that we just saw. That's for clarity, right? And again, another thing is that it would always be nice and expected of you to keep certain advertising and promotions budget of 4 to 5% to support your brand and to grow your brand over here. Yeah. Now, we have discussed regulatory environment in terms of Dubai municipality label compliance. We have discussed it in the context of the duty and VAT. Now we have to discuss it in the form of with reference to customs clearance. Customs clearance documents are the same all over. Okay, commercial invoice, packing list, health certificate, certificate of origin, and bill of lading. Now, in my experience, when you have all the right documents, and if your product is pre-registered and pre-approved, in 3 days' time, you have the shipment in your hand after landing it here. Of course, if it's a weekend, it might take one more day, but typically 2 to 3 days' time, you have the shipment in your hand. So, and all of this can be submitted online, or your agent can go and submit. And this application for, this application for the shipment release with Dubai municipality can also be done online on their portal, right? So this is what this I think takes care of the compliance in terms of customs as well as shipment clearance. Now, Dubai municipality's role for food labels and ingredients is very important because they decide if the products are suitable for human consumption or not. And I've just shown you one of the examples of how you all must be familiar with nutrition facts. It's our job to get these things translated for you, and then you put it on the label, and then we submit the label for approval. If your products are pre-approved, and if you have the health certificate coming in along with your shipment, that's it. You need not expect any delays in getting the shipment cleared, right? Now, one of the things which Frank had mentioned in the agenda was to also cover the trade agreements, right? Now, because of all these facilities that we have here, we do not really have any free trade agreement with US. For that matter, we have it with very few countries with for food products, right? Because our duties themselves are so small, which is only 5%. So as a result of which, we do not really have free trade agreements. So, but over the period of time, what we have done is we have registered ourselves as compliant with different tariff agreements, which are a part of the World Trade Organization, right? So we are a contracting party to the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade way back in 1994. And that is why we are a part of the World Trade Organization. So we are bound by those rules and regulations. So we are also signatory to the Information Technology Agreement, which is to do with all the IT products. Then we have signed a trade and investment framework agreement, yeah, with the United Arab Emirates and US in 2004 to provide a framework for dialogue. So it's always based on negotiations and how open we are in terms of, as in both manufacturer and buyer, to discuss possible investments and how to make certain things easier for approval and clearance. Now, the discussions for free trade agreements have started long ago, but both the parties have agreed to disagree on agreed to actually not to continue with the free trade agreement for now, and we don't think it's on the agenda also now to discuss. Now, these are some of the agreements that I've listed here for your benefit. None of them have direct impact right now. If one of the countries, for example, Oman has free trade agreement, right? So if you send a product to Oman, it's good. They will not be charging you any duties. But when it comes out of Oman to us, if the cargo is open, of course, UAE or Saudi will charge you a duty of 5%. But that's what, it will not exceed 5%. Right? Now, this being the full market situation and the trade agreements and consumers, customers, market structure, route to market, and the prices. Now, the next thing is, how do you give exposure to your branded products to the customers in the GCC? Now, I'm talking GCC because we are talking Gulfood. And Gulfood is the world's largest food exhibition that happens in the UAE, in Dubai. And this year again, now it's going to be in the month of February for a full week from Monday to Friday, which is 20th of February to the 24th of February. This is where all the regional retailers and distributors come to check about new trends in food, new brands. What does America have to sell in the US pavilion? What are the new products available to sell in Europe pavilion? What are the countries offering what? And so this is a very important exhibition in terms of food and hospitality trade show is concerned. We always ask all the participating companies, are you planning to only participate or are you looking for partnership? Because that spirit of attending the exhibition is very important, because we are here to help you find the suitable partners, and there will be partners who will be coming to your doorstep when you are participating in the exhibition, right? So with 5,000 exhibitors around, the distributors who come to you from different parts of the region should be able to choose you over, and we help you to do that by actually making you more aware about what to expect in the exhibition for your products, and also arranging some of the meetings beforehand at your own booth. So this is an exhibition that need not be missed at all. And if you're participating, participate in it with the spirit of seeking a partner and not just showing off your product, right? So pre-arranged meetings make all the difference, so that you are not waiting for the distributor to come, but you are expecting the distributor to come and meet with you. You know which other distributors will meet with you. And when you actually meet with them, you know who is right or wrong as a distributor for you. And that is what we say. This is why Gulfood is very important, because this is a networking place for all the buyers and sellers. You come here and you will notice that it's not only the distributors who have huge pavilions, but there are also the retailers who are participating under the different country pavilions. So you get to see and meet with all the retailers and all the distributors during this Gulfood show. So when you come here, you have to come prepared with all your samples, pitch, possibilities, showing your flexibility. If you have a registered product, even better. It makes it so much faster for them to buy it, and so on. So come prepared for partnership and not just participation, because that is when you can quickly be ahead of your competitors. And that's what Gulfood is all about in the month of February. And you have to stand out among 5,000 other exhibitors and 90,000 trade visitors. So that's Gulfood. Important thing about Gulfood is that it's not only about retail consumers, but it's also about hospitality. So you have the captive audience of different chefs and different hospitality competitions that will go on in a separate area, and you can also participate in those, and you can also participate in the competitions to show your product innovation or your new recipes to all the audience of the chefs. Okay, so this is pretty much what I wanted to share with you. There are different sources from where we have taken the information, and we certainly acknowledge that we have taken the information from all these sources and shared it with you, because this is all the data, this is published, and we were able to use that, right? So with all of this, I want to say to you, welcome to the United Arab Emirates. And if you have any question and answers, I'll be happy to answer those.
Did we have any questions from our participants?
I have one, if I can ask a question
Sure.
in person here. You mentioned that with the wholesaler, sometimes, oops, my light went off. Sometimes a wholesaler in the UAE, for example, may purchase an import from the United States and then re-export that to somebody else in another GCC country, perhaps. Under what circumstances would a US exporter want to sell to a wholesaler for something that's just going to be re-exported rather than just selling to the other GCC countries directly? Why would you sell it and then have it re-exported rather than just directly selling that to the buyers in another GCC country?
Well, I think the very important part here is that depending on the product, right? If your wholesaler is buying it, he has a lot of volume requirement because he's catering to other smaller countries by sitting in one place in a wholesale market in the UAE, right? So he's selling it to Oman, he's selling it to Iran, he's selling it to Iraq. Now, all of their requirements also individually, these are small requirements, but together he's able to place an order with you for a container.
Oh, okay.
That's one, right? Then second thing is, because you don't have to deal with each and every individual buyer from different countries and conform to their requirements. He already has a set of ready buyers with him. So he's only giving his customers a better choice or more products. And that makes your life so much more easier and faster to sell the product to. That is why UAE is a place for re-exports.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you.
And one more point is that the buyer from the wholesaler, okay, he will not only buy your product, he would like to buy 10 other products, right, from the wholesaler. So that way, even the wholesaler is able to send him a container load or a truck load because he's also consolidating few other products together along with yours.
That makes sense. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions?
Are there specialty food markets there and that retail specialty food items specifically?
See, all the supermarkets have an aisle for specialty foods, okay? And if I understand you correctly, or maybe I should ask you what you mean by specialty food. For example, there is, there are these vegan burgers, and there are these plant-based seafood, and those, if you think those are specialty foods, then we have we have dedicated aisles which are advertised within the supermarket to say,
Okay.
this is where you get specialty food. It's expected those specialty foods will also be expensive than normal food.
We have a unique product. It's called, it is wild gathered fennel pollen. It's a high-end cooking ingredient. And most of our distributors are produce distributors. And then they are distributors that call on hotels, restaurants, high-end restaurants, facilities type people, but it's just a high-end cooking ingredient.
Yeah. So that cooking ingredient, as you rightly said, has to go to the hotels. And for that, we have to approach the food service distributors. Those who, every morning, those who sell their truck to every single hotel, okay?
Yes.
And sell them different things. And then they say, okay, now chef, we also have so-and-so new product as an ingredient, okay? So, because as an ingredient, it will sell in smaller quantities compared to the other bulk staples, but he can take it, right? And that's what, so you have to look for food service distributors.
Like a Cisco or a US Foods, something like that. Are you aware of who Cisco is? And
yeah,
food
aware
distributor.
of Cisco is, yes.
Okay.
Now, here, of course, you'll have to go with distributors like Safco or Truebell, right? Some of those distributors who stand for taking something unique to the hotels. Okay, so they
Okay.
educate the chefs. They educate the chefs what the product is. They ask you, you have a meeting with the chef, or you have certain videos, you have certain recipes which they help the chefs to try out. Also, these distributors have their own kitchens wherein they invite the chefs and they say, okay, let's cook. And they have their own chefs. Then the chefs show them what to cook with different ingredients and how unique it can be and so on. So it's a food service distributor who can do justice to your product.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, if we don't have any other questions, then we'll go ahead and end today's session.